Nisboere word met trots geborg deur Laveld Agrochem en JAC Motors.
Tutus Loco started in 2016. It was started by my late father, Peter Webb. He was an incredible naturalist. He loved butterflies, bugs, spiders, and he happened to go out on a field trip with the solitary bee expert, Connell Eardley, and he got introduced to solitary bees. This was a completely new space for him, and he came home, I remember, wildly excited about providing homes for solitary bees, and so that's where the business began. My mother, my brother, and myself have continued my father's legacy and continued the business, so we're a small family business. My mother, Laurie, she runs manufacturing together with a gentleman called Maxwell, and myself, I head up online sales, I do the social media. My brother is an excellent photographer, and he does all product photos and all the rest for us. So we continue my father's legacy. So a bee hotel mimics the natural nesting sites of some solitary bees. So in South Africa, we have 1,200 different types of bees. Most people are only familiar with one, which is the honeybee. But there are 1,199 other bees that need a place to live. And so half of those, roughly, half live in the ground and half live in holes in dead wood. And so a bee hotel, you will see, is big holes all the way down to small holes, and it's different sized holes for different sized bees. So in a bee hotel, you will get a number of different types of bees moving in and nesting. And essentially, because they're solitary, like in their name, they live alone. And so one hole equals one bee. And solitary bees look different. So they come in different sizes, different shapes, different colors. And they all nest in very unique ways. So while they're nesting in holes in dead wood, they use different materials to close off. So at the end of their life cycle, they will lay eggs, they will put a small amount of pollen and nectar, like a little pantry, in the hole. Just one egg, one ball of pollen and nectar. They will seal off that, and they're almost creating like a bedroom, if you can imagine that. Then they will lay one more egg, put a little bit of pollen and nectar, like a little pantry, seal that off, and that's what's happening in each one of these holes. And so it's little bedrooms in these holes. They reach the outside, and then they seal off their nest. And each bee seals off their nest differently. And so some use gum from trees, some use leaves, some use mud and a few little pebbles, some use their saliva to close their holes. And so, bee hotels basically providing a nesting site for solitary bees. It's more important in the urban environments where we have limited nesting sites, but in the natural environment, there's a lot more options. It's an urban environment conservation effort for solitary bees. One point to make is that if you would like to make your own, or if you would like to put one up, that's not the whole solution to providing conservation for bees. You need to be able to feed the bees. So the bees need to be able to eat year-round. And so we encourage people to plant indigenous plants that flower at different times of year to be able to provide food for bees year-round. We also say your bee hotel will not work if you are spraying pesticides in your garden. So you need to stop spraying pesticides in order for the bees to move in. We also encourage keeping some patch of grass, if you have a patch of grass, to grow out. So it is the female bees that use the bee hotels, but the male bees also need a place to sleep, and they like to sleep on long grass. They'll cling onto the side of long grass on sort of more natural vegetation. So we encourage planting of indigenous gardens and then keeping a patch of lawn unmowed. And so it's not just about owning a bee hotel. Owning a bee hotel is one great step in the right direction, but we need everyone to be planting well, not spraying in their gardens. For anyone wanting to get into business, small business, or become an entrepreneur or get involved in the environmental field, I would say be willing to just start, and be willing to fail. That is probably the key that has got us to where we are today. The very first bee hotel looked very different, and we knew very little about solitary bees. But as time went on, so we grew our knowledge, we created a network. I think a network is essential. So people like Natasha that have been incredible supports in sharing their knowledge. And so, create a network to build your knowledge, be willing to fail, and try again until you get to a product that you find that the market is keen on. And it's hard work and dedication, but it was all started with passion, and that passion came from my father.
Nisboere wordt met trots geborgd deur Laveld Agrochem en JAC Motors.